Welcome to the Novel Idea Society. I am so glad that you're here. What a beautiful day where you are. You are, Eleanor, in BC.
Yes, I'm in Invermere, BC, which is so close to Saskatchewan that I'm actually on Saskatchewan time.
Oh, really? I didn't realize the same
Yeah.
time zone.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we talk about finding Flora, I want to talk about your connection to Saskatchewan because that is.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. I just was told by the library that this was canceled.
I give up. It's not. You're here. Don't worry about it.
Good, thank you.
Anyway,
Okay.
okay.
I'll just jump in here.
Yeah, so tell me, because as soon as I saw Elinor Florence grew up on a Saskatchewan farm and earned degrees in English and journalism. Me too, minus the farm part, but I did grow up here. So tell me, where in Saskatchewan is your home?
Okay, so I grew up on a farm 8 miles east of North Battleford,
Okay.
and my farm has a very interesting history, which actually led me to write my first wartime novel, because my dad was in the Royal Canadian Air Force, and when he came home in 1946, he met my mother, who was the postmaster's daughter from Battleford, and they wanted to farm, but they didn't have enough money, so the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan had opened all these airports all over the prairies, including Saskatchewan, and they had a relief airfield 8 miles east of town. And so my dad bought the airport. So my farm was a World War II training airport, and the house where I grew up was the barracks building, which they cut in half. My parents cut it in half, and half went into North Battleford and became the Mennonite Church, which it is to this day, and the other half became my family home. So we knew, my brother and I knew from a very young age that our farm had been a big part of winning the war, and so it really sparked my interest in wartime. And so that's where I grew up. My brother took over the family farm. Um, like most farm families, he built a new house in the same yard and raised his kids there. And now my nephew's taking over the farm, and I still get to go home and sleep in the old house in my own bed in my old bedroom. It's been abandoned now for a few years since my parents died, so it's getting pretty run down, and I always have to vacuum all the dead flies and spiders out of it before I can sleep there. But for nostalgia reasons, we go home every summer, and I'll be there in July. And I still consider myself a Saskatchewan resident in a way, because I still own a quarter section of land there, and my brother farms it for me. So my ties to Saskatchewan are pretty deep. And I went to U of S in Saskatoon for my English degree, started my newspaper career at the Battleford Home Paper, and then decided I wanted to become a reporter. So I took my journalism degree at Carleton in Ottawa, because at the time there was no degree granting institution in Western Canada for journalism. And then I came back to Saskatchewan, and my first job was at the Western Producer in Saskatoon as a farm reporter. Hence my interest in agriculture and farming and homesteading and all that good stuff.
So how long did you stay in the journalism world, or do you still consider yourself part of it?
I still consider myself a journalist. I worked for newspapers in all four Western provinces. And then in 1996, it was a long time ago now, I was working for the Vancouver province in Vancouver, and we decided we wanted to raise our kids in a small town. So we looked all over BC. I couldn't persuade my husband to move back to Saskatchewan, unfortunately. So we found Invermere, which is a little tiny town on the eastern border, the southeastern border of Alberta, really. Banff is
Yeah.
19 minutes away, so if you know where that is. Um, yeah, so when I got here, I thought, well, that's the end of my journalism career. And then I ran across a guy who had driven his propane truck off a cliff and lived into a lake. And the words drama in real life sprang into my mind. So I interviewed him and I typed up the story and mailed it to Reader's Digest in Montreal, an envelope with a stamp on it. And they loved it and they published it and asked me if I wanted to become a regular contributor to the Digest. So that was a dream come true. The internet was just coming on strong then, so I was able to research and write my stories while my kids were in school. And I did that for 8 years. And then the opportunity arose here, which I just couldn't pass up. A young couple here in town had started a rival newspaper to the old established chain newspaper, and almost immediately realized that they weren't going to be able to do it. They didn't have enough money. They didn't have a reporter. And so I went to them and I said, you guys should really keep this going because it's such a great idea. And they said, well, we've got a better idea. You buy the paper and we'll work for you. So I bought the paper. And so for the next 6 years, then I owned and published my own weekly newspaper, which again is kind of a dream come true. Sam, I'm sure you can appreciate, nobody tells you what to write about. You call your own shots. And I sold that paper in 2010 just because it was so darn much work. Ironically, Reader's Digest is now out of business, but my paper, the Columbia Valley Pioneer, is still going strong here in our little town. And that's when I decided to turn my hand to fiction in 2010.
So the first question that one of the readers in here asked was, why are your books so hard to find other than this one? Because they started looking for them.
I'm really sorry about that, and that is on me, unfortunately. Last year, I severed ties with my publisher, Dundurn Press, and I purchased the rights to those 2 books back from them and signed my new contract with a much bigger publisher, Simon & Schuster. So my secret plan is, so only you know my secret plan, is that Simon & Schuster will be so impressed by finding Flora that they will reissue those 2 books. They'll have to, because I own the rights to them now. So I could have self-published them and just put them up on Amazon, but I'm just waiting to see how this book goes and whether Simon & Schuster is interested in reissuing them. In the meantime, they are available at pretty much every public library in Canada, including Regina and Saskatoon, and you can also find used copies online, but that's the best I can do, I'm afraid.
So
I could sell you a copy, but it costs $20 for the book and $20 to mail a copy, so it's not worth the money, but you can always email me if you want to spring for that.
how is the book going? How has the reception to this been?
Well, just fantastic. I mean, it debuted the first week on #1 on the national bestseller list.
Were you expecting that?
Not at all. It's still on the bestseller list 4 weeks later. And today I had even bigger news. Heather Reisman chose it as a Heather's Pick. She's the
Congratulations.
owner and president of Indigo. And so, when you walk into a chapter store, there's that big Heather's Picks thing. So she only chooses books that she has personally read and loved.
So did she call you, or how did you get that news?
Through Indigo's sales team, they informed my publisher, and my publisher emailed me in capital letters, obviously.
They're very happy with this book then too.
Oh yeah, I mean, my publicist said they were high-fiving each other in the office when I hit #1, so.
As a Canadian author, there is a real big appetite right now for everything Canada. So your book couldn't have come out at a better time. And I was talking with my spouse about it today because I said, where it's set, it has like 1883, 1923, like Yellowstone, but Canada vibes. Like it really could be a movie or like a mini series or a limited series because it's just, and I mean, maybe it's because I grew up here and it's one of those things that like you identify with your family's history and where they came from and the province. Those of us that grew up here, I mean, you'd go to the Plains History Museum and they'd show you the sod hut, and you'd go through all of those things. And then you read about this and it's so, I don't want to say relatable because I was born in 1984, but it's relatable to our history. And so I'm wondering, as a Canadian author right now, with your first book with a big publisher, what that reception has been like writing, not just as a Canadian, but writing Canadian content set in Canada.
Well, all three of my novels have kind of been in that same genre, Western Canadian history. The first one was set in Saskatchewan, the second one in the Peace River area of Alberta. But when I wrote this book, I guess what's shocked me about the success of the book is I thought it was such a regional book that it wouldn't be of interest to across Canada. And I also thought I've set it in a community, Alex, Alberta, that nobody's ever heard of. Even a lot of Albertans don't know where that is because it's so tiny. So to find that people in Ontario and, central and eastern Canada are reading and enjoying it, I'm so thrilled. And I hope they learn something about Western Canadian history, because I don't think that they know a lot about our history. And in fact, I should qualify that by saying a lot of people in Western Canada don't know about our own history either, because I've just come back from a whole round of book events in Alberta. And every time I tried to explain to somebody what my book was about, I would say, "Do you know what a homestead is?" And it's shocking how many people said, "No, I don't." So there is, a big gap in our own history. And I love to fill that gap. And I think it's my journalism background that makes me want to educate as well as entertain.
I liked that there was a bibliography in the end, because I thought there are some things in this book that are just so specific that they have to be true. Was that really important to you to get those things in there and to make sure that there was pieces of real history in there with the fiction?
Absolutely. All of my books are fact-based fiction. I like to write a novel in which a fictional character is walking through history and all the times and events and people she encounters are realistic. Now, I did have to take some liberties, of course, with people like, Frank Oliver and William Van Horn, and, we don't really know what they said and did, but I tried to stay pretty close to their characters.
A politician trying to make money off of land is not a unheard of storyline, even
No,
currently.
no, and Frank Oliver he was quite a nasty character, really. And, even though he was very influential in creating Edmonton and contributing to the West, he was a racist and sexist, and that's been pretty well documented. And in fact, there's a movement in Edmonton to take his name off Frank Oliver Park and things like that.
Is it true that he's the reason that Edmonton is the capital of Alberta? I didn't know.
Absolutely
I
true.
mean, as someone from Saskatchewan, I'm not as invested in their history,
Yeah.
but I didn't know that.
No, well, why would you? It's just a little known chapter
Yeah, but
in history,
it's
right?
very interesting. I think it's also interesting because Saskatchewan became a province in 1905 as well. So there's
Exactly.
just so many parallels between the
Parallels.
provinces and the experience, right? When you're describing that first winter, I mean, that could have been this winter, but I mean, without, you know, shelter and the danger of it and stuff. So when I ask you this, I'm curious, who is Flora to you?
Well, she's purely fictional, so I'm not
But where do you
drawing.
steal her personality from?
Oh, I think that I would have been a homesteader if I
You?
could have had the chance. Yes. I think the challenge of creating a new home, and that desire for a home of her own. And I think that was very common for a lot of those people that came over here from, or came from other parts of Canada or the US or came from Europe, was that just that desire to own their own piece of land. And of course, we know that they had to displace other people to do that. And so one of my concerns about writing the book was I was really nervous about writing about white settlers. And I tried to be sensitive about that by introducing my Métis character.
Hmm.
And my
What were
Métis,
you nervous about? Like, which part of it made you nervous? Because it is factual history, the way it happened, the way it played out.
well, colonialism and white settlers have kind of a bad reputation right now. And, I just didn't want to offend anybody. But at the same time, homesteaders were absolutely foundational to our way of life in Western Canada.
You
So,
are Métis, correct?
yes, so I named my Métis character Jessie MacDonald after my own great grandmother, who was a Scottish Cree woman from the Red River area of Manitoba. Red River is the original name of Winnipeg, but that
Mhm.
whole cluster of settlements there was the Red River.
Was her personality in the book similar to your
I
relative?
have I have no idea what her
She's
because it was
feisty, so
she died at the age of 37 after giving birth to her seventh child. So I
oh my
don't
gosh.
really know very much about her. I like to think that that's the kind of person she was. But I did, the personality of Jessie, and I hope everybody has read the book. I don't want to give too much away here, but I based her on a character right here in my own little community here in BC, the Shoe Swap Band. There was a woman named Rosalie Kinbasket, and she was a real rootin' tootin' gun totin' mama, and she broke horses and she trained dogs and she was a hunter and a guide and an outfitter and just a really interesting woman, wore man's clothing, and she went to residential school for one semester and came home and told her parents she wasn't going back again, and so they didn't send her back. So I don't know how that worked exactly. With maybe she hid out in the bush, but anyway, I based my Jessie MacDonald character in the book on Rosalie. Sadly, Rosalie also died at a young age because she took one of her racehorses out to Vancouver to enter it in a race, and on the racetrack she was thrown off her horse and broke her neck and died.
That's awful.
But her family here, who I got permission from to model my character after her, absolutely thrilled and delighted that she was being honored this way.
Eleanor, when it comes to the outdoor life, the act of homesteading, the gardening, sowing crops, dealing with horses, dealing with chickens, how much of that is from your real life experience?
Well, we did not have running water until I was 14. So I didn't have to, you know, imagine what it was like to use an
Mhm.
outhouse. We did have power because the Department of National Defense had put electricity into the airport before my parents started farming there. We did have power. I would say, though, uh, I read about 40 pioneer memoirs
Ah.
before, so I really
It just
understood.
reads very legit. Like it feels like it was written from a place of like legitimate understanding and a place of you could really envision it. It was written in a way that you didn't have to try very hard to imagine. And I mean, part of that is we know the landscape here, but I also think that it's just really beautifully written in a way that it was really easy to imagine what these people were going through.
I don't think people can really appreciate that life was hanging by a thread for those homesteaders. I mean, it was unbelievably challenging. Only 50% of them actually proved up. They either gave up their claim or died trying. And it was difficult.
That blizzard scene where she's on the horse and they get basically trapped in a blizzard, you can feel the like, is this, well, you know, this isn't where it ends because there's still lots of book left, but you can imagine anyone who's been stuck out in the cold, locked out of their house, like any of that real fear, panic, like it's not the same, but it's very that fear and that cold in the prairies is very relatable. I'm wondering what your writing process is like. Do you hammer out a draft? Do you have a plan? Do you have things plotted out, or do you see where the story takes you?
Well, they say there are two kinds of writers, and I'm sure you've heard this before, plotters and pantsters, people who write by the seat of their pants. I'm a plotter. So I like to gather, I like to do masses of research. In fact, I love the research part almost more than the writing. So it's hard for me to stop researching and start writing. But when I do, then I do have a pretty good idea of where the book is going. And I start writing scenes, the most colorful scenes that spring to mind, and then I start plotting, chapter by chapter, how the story is going to unfold. I don't like dual timeline books. I think they're too confusing. So I try to write from one character's point of view, right from beginning to end. And I think I did that because I was such an amateur when I started. I didn't even know how to create all these literary devices. But I've had people say to me, "Oh, thank goodness, we're so tired of trying to figure out what year it is and who's talking." So I think writing that way is more relatable for a lot of people.
It is refreshing to just not have to wonder from whose point of view is this and what year am I in. Um, Strong female characters. Reminds me, I don't know if you've read the Alice Network, but it reminded me a little bit of the Alice Network in that strong female network of women. Was that always the intention? Was it to be about Flora and women, or is that something that developed as you were plotting?
Well, I knew it was going to be about Flora. And by the way, my own Scottish ancestors were cleared from the area around Dornoch in Scotland. So I did have that realistic background to draw on. But it wasn't until I started reading history and read the local Alex history book that I realized there were a lot of interesting women who had been around there. For example, the two women, Miss Greenwood and Miss Edgar, they're based on a real couple that lived at Alex,
The
and they
chicken
were
lady.
they were called the chicken ladies. They raised chickens, and I thought that was such an interesting. They were at, they were in a Boston marriage, which at the time was a term that referred to any two women that set up a household together. They may have been gay, they may not. In those days, women didn't make as much money as men, so it was fairly common for two women to set up a household together to save money. And I didn't say that Miss Greenwood and Miss Edgar were gay. I'm leaving that up to the reader to decide. They might have been just very close friends. But they did farm near Alex. They sold their eggs to the CPR.
In your heart, are they together or are they friends?
Um, I would say in my heart, I think they're probably more than friends. But I didn't want to
Maybe
really,
just maybe.
yeah, I
But so
didn't.
this Alex history book, did you read that and then decide to set the book there, or had you decided to set the book there and came upon this history book?
I decided to set the book there when I came across the interesting rumor of how Alex came by its name. And right there, I thought, wow, there's a backstory there. Alex Westhead and the president of the CPR? What the heck?
And did you, in your journalistic research ways, did you corroborate the rumor or is it still just a rumor?
I tried to corroborate it, but I will say that when I asked the ladies at the Alex Wagon Wheel Museum if it was true, they said, "Oh, of course it's true. Everybody in town knew about it." So I said, "Okay, I'm going with that then."
I love that so much. So, what's next for these characters? Like the book ends. what do you envision for the rest of their happy life?
Well, I think that one of the reasons my books are popular is because they do have a happy ending.
It's nice. I will
I
give you
think
that. It's
people
nice.
are, I think people are kind of sick of the really dark, disturbing. A lot of historical fiction is really dark. And I wanted to write about the happy, positive outcomes of history and that people did get happily married and live happily ever after. And yeah, so I
But
just
what do you
think
think happened to them? Like, what do you did she get her giant house that she thought she was actually going to get in Vancouver? Like, what do you envision for the two of them and for the chicken ladies for that matter?
I think the chicken ladies moved to Santa Barbara and adopted a little boy and lived happily ever after. And I think that Flora and the doctor had a big family. I think they had 5 or 6 children. Probably the yellow house wouldn't accommodate their family eventually. They might have had to build an addition or something. But I think he had a thriving practice and they lived a happy life.
I love that so much. Okay. I want to open this up to other people. I will start with online. We have 3 other people here. Sylvia, do you have any? You've got your camera on, so you've made yourself an easy target. Do you have any questions?
No, not really. I haven't read the book.
Oh, uh-oh.
No, you've given
That's
nothing.
okay.
You haven't given away anything that kills the plot, so don't worry about that, Eleanor.
Okay.
Well, I recommended this to my book club because I heard you speak at the library in Qualicum Beach a
Oh,
number of years ago, and I read Wildwood, and
oh,
I thoroughly loved it. And one of the people from the book club said her mother just recently read it, and I saw her on Saturday, and I said, "Well, you got to get online here and listen to the author."
Well, the good news for you, Sylvia, is this is being recorded, so when you go look for the YouTube, it'll be there and they can watch it over and over if they so choose.
Perfect.
Gail, what about you? Any questions?
No questions, but I thoroughly enjoyed. I met Eleanor in Climax, Saskatchewan last summer when she was at Stegner House in East End. And we bought her 2 books and we were so impressed with her presentation. Well, I read the books and I passed them to my husband and he read them and we both agreed these are keepers. They don't go in the next garage sale. And I think partly we relate because that's our parents' generation, and we are at an age where we are learning about our parents' generation and appreciating it now that they are gone, and we are not hearing these stories so much anymore. So when we were so impressed with both of these books, I pre-ordered Finding Flora as soon as I heard that it was on pre-order, and our Yellow Canary bookstore in Gull Lake, Saskatchewan ordered it in and had it on April 1st for me to pick up.
great. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, that goes like that. Bean, questions? She might just be listening. Okay, any questions in the room? Hang on, I will turn it around so you can see. There's a few people here tonight. We do have people here.
Hey, everybody.
Some behind there too. Any questions?
No, I haven't had a chance to read the book in full. I've just skimmed through it so I could come to the session tonight because I love to meet the authors and hear about where it comes from. But I'm from Swift Current, Saskatchewan. My sister and I grew up there. My sister lives in Invermere. So
Oh,
I have to let her know that I met
Oh,
her.
that's why you look so startled when she said Invermere.
And I spend most of my summers out there and have forever. So we were avid golfers. But yeah, no.
oh, well, you'll have to give me a call when you're here next. We'll go for coffee.
Oh, that sounds wonderful, Eleanor. I would do that. Yeah.
You just look her up on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah.
Honestly, my life is an open book on social media, and more than you ever wanted to know about me is available on my website, including my whole life story about my childhood in Saskatchewan and everything. So feel free.
Any other questions? No?
I just really love the book. It's totally my vibe.
She liked the book. She's the one who said, why can't I get the rest of her books?
Oh, soon, I hope, soon.
All right.
But in the meantime, there's the public library.
So,
I
Elinor,
should mention, Sam, my environment here, this is my writing desk, and I do have this beautiful sunroom, and I had this pristine white office. And now I have 5 young grandchildren. I have 3 adult daughters, and 2 of them moved back to Invermere with their husbands, and one has 3 children. She's a teacher, and the other one is a stay-at-home mother, and she has 2 children. And, so obviously we're very blessed to have all the kids in our town and see them frequently, but they have pretty much wrecked my house.
I was going to say, I can't help but admire the giant dollhouse behind
Yes.
you. So what are you working on now? Are you researching other stories? Are you working on another book? What's the next plan for you?
Well, I have to say that I'm a victim of my own success, because already Simon and Schuster is saying, so what's the next book about? And I haven't even gotten that far. I mean, I've been pretty busy in the last few months, just planning all my book events. I'm leaving next weekend, and then I have book events in Kamloops, Chilliwack, Vancouver, Duncan, Nanaimo, and Qualicum Beach, where we own a second home. That's where we saw you, Sylvia. If you go on, do you live in Qualicum now, Sylvia?
No, actually, I had been in Lloydminster. I spent 18 years in Parksville,
Oh,
and a year and a half ago, I moved to Regina,
oh,
and I'd
There's
never
nothing
lived in
wrong with
Saskatchewan.
Regina. You said that like it's a bad taste in your mouth.
Well,
oh,
everybody says that. I came here because my husband wasn't well, and his son and his family are here. And we got here in September 23, and he died the 9th of December 23, and I've stayed. So I guess
Well, we're happy to have ya.
yeah.
I'm a Saskatchewan resident from here on out.
Well, I hear about lots of people moving back to Saskatchewan now. I think it's a thing.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
and I did send the invitation to your garden party to a friend of mine in Parksville. So
Oh, good.
she may show up there.
There's a bookstore in Qualicum Beach called Mulberry Bush Books, and she wanted to host me for a book event, but it's at such a little tiny bookstore that we knew that we would have to find an off-site location somewhere. And I finally thought, well, why don't I just have it at my house? We've got a big backyard. So I'm doing my own book launch on May 23rd, which is also my birthday. So it's going to be open to the public, and I've sent out invitations to everybody I know and put it on my website. So we'll see who shows up. It's an experiment.
Elinor, do you have boundaries?
Apparently not.
That is so funny. But you know what? I love that for you, and that the community just like embraces you so much that you're so comfortable having them in your home. I guess it's also different not being in like Toronto or Ottawa, and you're not concerned about necessarily the masses showing up, just the people who like love and support you in the community. So you have no idea what you're doing next, is what you're telling me. You're gonna enjoy your book launch and your book success through summer, and then
I have an idea for another book, but I don't want to spoil my mojo by
that's fine.
talking about it. And it again, once this flurry of events dies down, then I will start the research process, and that takes 6 months anyway.
Was Flora done when you pitched it to Simon and Schuster, or did you pitch the idea to them and then they signed you?
No, it was finished. But having said that, they had their own editor then make some massive change, well, not, they didn't change it, but they asked me to make revisions to it.
How different is the story from your
And
original?
it's not very different.
Oh, okay.
I just had to move stuff around and, flesh out some things, but
Oh, okay,
it's a better book
good.
for,
It's
for
your,
having been professionally edited. And I think that's one of the bonuses of me as a former journalist is I'm used to being edited. I am used to having my words shredded to pieces, so it doesn't bother me. I know some writers are very, territorial about their own work, but I'm not.
Can
Gail,
I
you
just jump
popped your
in here?
camera back on. What's up?
Yes, my husband's a member of Prairie Quills Writers in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, and we met at the Yellow Canary, excuse me, bookstore in Gull Lake the other day, and I think all three of the members bought your book. And it was suggested that when you come to Saskatchewan this summer, maybe you could do Write Out Loud in Swift Current. So just putting that out there.
Gail, I would love to do every event that people ask me to, but I'm just so overwhelmed. I am coming back to East End in July.
Oh,
just
cool.
For a visit, and because I love that part of the world. But I'm hoping to not do any public events, but maybe I'll see you there.
Well, send me an email and we'll meet for coffee.
Okay.
Okay.
The reason I'm talking about East End, Sam, is because last year I was the 2024 recipient of the Wallace Stegner Grant for the Arts, which comes with a free month-long stay at the Wallace Stegner Historic Home in East End. I don't know if you know about that.
No.
Well, he was a Pulitzer Prize winning American author, and his parents were homesteaders, and he was a child in East End until he was 12. And at some point, the Little Arts Council in East End decided to preserve and maintain his home. And now it's like a writer's retreat for people all over the world. I mean, I was there for the month of June, and in July, a writer from New Jersey was coming, and after that, a guy from London, England was coming.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, no, it's a little old house, but it's just a perfect retreat, and it has the vibe of, this famous author, Wallace Stegner, grew up in this house, and you lie in bed and look at the ceiling and think, Wallace used to lie in bed and look at this ceiling. I mean, it's very cool.
And here I thought you were going to tell me you just had a real obsession with dinosaurs.
I didn't even know about the dinosaur thing before I got there. It was
Oh, you know now, because it's a big
totally
deal.
about Wallace.
Yeah, it's a big deal. That's so funny.
Yeah.
He stands a little gem in the heart of the prairies. So yes.
It is, and I wrote an ode to East End on my website. If you want to go on my website and just search for the word East End, it'll come up.
Okay. Anything else before I wrap this up and let you go? This has been lovely. We started out a little rough, but we got there in the end. And this has been so lovely. It's been so lovely to chat with you. Your book was wonderful. And I hope you'll stay in touch. And when you do get to wherever that next book is, have Natasha reach out and we'll have a conversation, whether it's here or on the air or wherever it may be.
I should mention, Sam, that I'm kind of trying not to do so many events, but I am doing 2 in Saskatchewan in July. One at the North Battleford Public Library when I'm going to visit the farm, and one at McNally Robinson in Saskatoon.
Oh, that's such a great bookstore. When is the one in Saskatoon?
July 23rd. But
are these dates on your website?
They're both on the events page on my website. So along with
those to the book club, because we have people from all over the province in the book club. So maybe there's a chance for some people to come out and hear you chat.
Excellent.
And go check out the stores and stuff. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for logging on with us and reading along. And we'll see the rest of you if you want to join us at the end of next month.
It's always a pleasure to talk to people from Saskatchewan.
And feel
so-
free to lurk in the book club and read along and join any of the meetings if you so choose. You just jump in by Zoom like everyone else.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.